maybe there are a hell of a lot of broken pots on Sirius 5, Joe said. Bit of humor there, the first QCA man said tartly. He nodded to his companion, and the two of them opened the door and departed from his room. The door closed behind them. "Maybe it's one gigantic pot," Joe said loudly. "A pot the size of a planet, with 50 glazes and—" He gave up. They probably couldn't hear him anyhow. And originally ornamented by the greatest graphic artist in Plabkian history, he thought. And it's the only product of his genius left, and an earthquake has broken the pot, which is locally worshipped. So the whole Plabkian civilization has collapsed. Plabkian civilization. He thought. Just how far developed are they on Sirius 5? He asked himself. A good question. Going to the phone, he dialed the encyclopedia number. "Good evening," a robotic voice said. "What info do you require, sir or madam?" Joe said, "Give me a brief description of the social development on Sirius 5. Without the passing of even a 10th second, the artificial voice said, "It is an ancient society which has seen better days. The current dominant species on the planet consists of what is called a Glimang. This shadowy, enormous entity is not native to the planet. It migrated there several centuries ago, taking over from the feeble species such as wubs, wurges, clakes, trobes, and printers left over when the once ruling master species, the so-called fog things of antiquity, passed away." "Glimang, the Glimang, is all-powerful?" Joe asked. "His power," the encyclopedia's voice said, "is sharply curtailed by a peculiar book, probably non-existent, in which, it is alleged, everything which has been, is, and will be is recorded." Joe said, "Where did this book come from?" "You have used up your allotted quantity of information," the voice said, and clicked off. Joe waited exactly 3 minutes and then redialed the number. "Good evening. What info do you require, sir or madam?" "The book on Sirius 5, Joe said, which is alleged to tell everything that has been—" "Oh, it's you again. Well, your trick won't work anymore. We store voice patterns now." It rang off. That's right, Joe realized. I remember reading in the newspaper about that. It was costing the government too much money the way it was, when we did what I tried to do just now. Nuts, he said to himself. 24 hours before he could get any more free information. Of course, he could go to a private enterprise encyclopedia booth, to Mr. Encyclopedia, but it would cost as much as he had stored in his asbestos bag. The government, when licensing the non-state-owned enterprises such as Mr. Attorney and Mr. Encyclopedia and Mr. Job, had seen to that. I think I got aced out, Joe Fernwright said to himself. As usual. Our society, he thought broodingly, is the perfect form of government. Everyone is aced out in the end. Chapter 3. When he reached his work cubicle the next morning, he found a second special delivery letter waiting for him. Ship out to Plowman's Planet, Mr. Fernwright, where you are needed. Your life will signify something. You will create a permanent endeavor which will outlast me as well as you. Plowman's Planet, Joe reflected. It rang a bell, although dimly. Absent-mindedly, he dialed the encyclopedia's number. Is Plowman's Planet, he began, but the artificial voice interrupted him. Not for another 12 hours. Goodbye. Just one fact, he said angrily. I just want to find out if Sirius 5 and Plowman's... Click. The robot mechanism had rung off. Bastards, he thought. All robot servo mechanisms and all computers are bastards. Who can I ask, he asked himself, that would know offhand if Plowman's Planet is Sirius 5? Kate. Kate would know. But, he thought as he started to dial her office number, if I'm going to emigrate to Plowman's Planet, I don't want her to know. She'll be able to trace me, re my back alimony payments. Once more he picked up the unsigned note, studied it, and in a gradual seeping fashion, a realization concerning it suffused his mind and entered into his field of awareness. There were more words on the note in some kind of semi-invisible ink. Runic writing, he wondered. He felt a sort of wicked animal excitement, as if he had found a carefully protected trail. He dialed Smith's number. If you got a letter, Joe said, with semi-invisible runic writing on it, how would you... you in particular, go about making it visible?" "I'd hold it over a heat source," Smith said. "Why?" Joe said. "Because it's most likely written in milk, and writing in milk turns black over a heat source." "Runic writing in milk?" Joe said angrily. "Statistics show—" "I can't imagine it. I simply can't imagine it. Runic writing in milk." He shook his head. "Anyway, what statistics are there on runic writing? This is absurd." He got out his cigarette lighter and held it beneath a sheet of paper. At once, black letters became visible. "We shall raise Held Scala." "What's it say?" Smith asked. Joe said, "Listen, Smith, you haven't used the encyclopedia in the last 24 hours, have you?" "No," Smith said. Joe said, "Call it. Ask if Plowman's Planet is another name for Sirius 5. And ask it what Held Scala consists of." "I guess I could ask the dictionary that," he said to himself. "What a mess," he said. "Is this any way to conduct business?" He felt fear overlaid with nausea. It did not appeal to him. It did not seem effective nor funny. It was merely strange. And, he thought, I have to report this to the police, so I'll be back cloistered with them again. And now there's probably already a file on me. Hell, he thought, there has been since my birth. But now the file has new entries, which always was bad, as every citizen knew. Held Scala, he thought. An odd and somehow impressive verbal integer. It appealed to him. It seemed totally opposed to such conditions as cubicles, phones, walking to work through endless crowds, fiddling his life away on the veteran's dole, meanwhile playing the game. I am here, he thought, when I should be there. "Call me back, Smith," he said into the phone, "as soon as you've talked to the encyclopedia. Bye." He rang off, paused, then dialed the dictionary. "Held Scala," he said. "What does it mean?" The dictionary, or rather its artificial voice, said, "Held Scala is the ancient cathedral of the once ruling fog things of Sirius 5. It sank under the sea centuries ago, and has never been placed back, intact and functioning, with its old holy artifacts and relics, on dry land." "Are you hooked into the encyclopedia right now?" Joe asked. "That's an awful lot of definition." "Yes, sir or madam, I am hooked into the encyclopedia." "Then can you tell me any more?" "No more." "Thank you," Joe Fernwright said huskily, and hung up. He could see it. Glimang, or the Glimang, if that was correct, evidently there was only one of them, intended to raise the ancient cathedral Held Scala, and to do so the Glimang needed a wide span of skills, such as his own, for example, his ability to heal ceramic ware. Held Scala obviously contained pots, enough of them to cause the Glimang to approach him, and to offer him a good sum for his work. By now, he's probably recruited 200 skills from 200 planets, Joe realized. I'm not the only one getting peculiar letters, etc. He saw in his mind a great cannon being fired, and out of it special delivery letters, thousands of them, addressed to various life-form individuals throughout the galaxy. And oh God, he thought, the police are spotting it. They barged into my room minutes after I consulted the bank. Last night, those two, they knew already what these letters and weird note floating in the water closet of the toilet mean. They could have told me, but of course they wouldn't. That would be too natural, too humane. His phone buzzed. He lifted the receiver. "I contacted the encyclopedia," Smith said as his image appeared on the screen. "Plowman's Planet is space argot for Sirius 5. Since I had hold of the encyclopedia, I took the opportunity of asking it more. I thought you might appreciate it." "Yes," Joe said. "One vast old creature lives there, apparently infirm." "You mean it's sick?" Joe asked. "Well, you know, age and such like. Dormant, that's what it's been." "Is it menacing?" "How could it be menacing if it's dormant as well as infirm? It's senile. Yes, that's the word, senile." Joe asked, "Has it ever said anything?" "Not really. Not even the time of day. 10 years ago it came to briefly and asked for an orbiting weather station satellite." "What did it pay for it with?" "It didn't. It's indigent. We contributed it free, and we threw in a news-type satellite along with the weather one." "Broke and senile," Joe said. He felt glum. "Well," he said, "I guess I won't be getting any money out of it." "Why, were you suing it?" "Goodbye, Smith," Joe said. "Wait," Smith said. "There's a new game. You want to join? It consists of speed scanning the newspaper archives to come up with the funniest headline. Real headline, you realize, not made up. I have a good one. It's from 1962. You want to hear it?" "Okay," Joe said, still feeling glum. His glumness had oozed throughout him, leaving him inert and sponge-like. He responded reflexively. "Let's hear your headline." "Elmo Plaskett sinks giants," Smith read from his slip of paper. Who the hell was Elmo Plaskett? "He came up from the miners, and—" "I have to go now," Joe said, standing up. "I have to leave my office." He hung up. "Home," he said to himself, "to get my bag of quarters." Chapter 4. Along the sidewalks of the city, the vast animal-like gasping entity which was the mass of Cleveland's unemployed and unemployable gathered and stood and waited and fused together into a lump both unstable and sad. Joe Fernwright, carrying his sack of coins, rubbed against their collective flank as he pushed his way toward the corner and the Mr. Job booth. He smelled the familiar vinegar-like penetrating scent of their presence, their overheated and yet plaintively disappointed massiveness. On all sides of him their eyes contemplated his forward motion, his determination to get past them. "Excuse me," he said to a slender Mexican-looking youth who had become wedged, among all the others, directly ahead of him. The youth blinked nervously, but did not move. He had seen the asbestos bag which Joe held. Beyond any doubt he knew what Joe had and where Joe was going and what Joe intended to do. "Can I get by?" Joe asked him. It seemed an impasse of permanent proportions. Behind him the throng of inactive humanity had closed in, blocking any chance of retreat. He could not go back, and he could make no progress forward. "I guess the next thing," he thought, "is that they'll grab my quarters, and that will be that." His heart hurt, as if he had climbed a ridge, a final ridge of life itself, a terrible hill strewn with skulls. He saw about him gaping eye sockets. He experienced a weird visual distortion, as if the ultimate disposition of these people had made its appearance palpably, as if, he thought, it can't wait, it must have them now. The Mexican youth said, "Could I look at your coins, sir?" It was hard to know what to do. The eyes, or rather the hollow sockets, continued to press in at him in a complete circle. He felt them encompass him and his asbestos bag. "I am shrinking," he thought in surprise. Why? He felt weak and glum, but not guilty. It was his money. They knew it, and he knew it. And yet the vacant eyes made him small, as if he thought, "It doesn't matter what I do, whether I get to the Mr. Job booth or not. What I do, what becomes of me, it won't change things for these people." And yet on a conscious level he didn't care. They had their lives, he had his, and his included a sack of carefully saved-up metal coins. "Can they contaminate me?" he asked himself. "Drag me down into their inertial storm? This is their problem, not mine," he thought. "I'm not going to sink with the system. This is my first decision, to ignore the 2 special delivery letters and do this. Take this journey with this sack of quarters. This is the start of my escape, and there will be no new bondage." "No," he said. "I won't take any," the youth said. A strange impulse overcame Joe Fernwright. Opening the bag, he rummaged, got out a quarter. He held it out toward the Mexican youth. As the boy accepted it, other hands appeared on all sides. The ring of hopeless eyes had become a ring of outstretched open hands. But there was no greed conspiring against him. None of the hands tried to grab his sack of coins. The hands were simply there, merely waiting in a silence made up of trust, as his own earlier waiting at the mail tube had been. Horrible, Joe thought. These people think I'm going to give them a present, as if they've been waiting for the universe to do this. The universe has given them nothing all their lives, and they have accepted that as silently as now. They see me as a kind of supernatural deity. But no, he thought, I've got to get out of here. I can't do anything for them. But even as he realized this, he found himself digging into the cloth sack. He found himself putting a quarter into one palm after another. Overhead, a police cruiser whistled loudly as it lowered, like a great lid, its 2 occupants in their slick, bright uniforms, wearing riot helmets that sparkled, holding, each of them, a laser rifle. One of the 2 cops said, "Get out of this man's way!" The pressing circle began to melt back. The extended hands disappeared, as if into a numbed, intolerable darkness. "Don't stand there," the other cop said to Joe in his thick cop's voice. "Get moving. Get those coins out of here, or I'll write you out a citation, after which you won't have one goddamn coin left." Joe walked on. "What do you think you are?" the other cop said to him as the cruiser followed after him, holding its position directly above his head. "Some sort of privately endowed philanthropic organization?" Saying nothing, Joe continued on. "You're required by law to answer me," the cop said. Reaching into his asbestos cloth sack, Joe got out a quarter. He handed it up toward the nearer of the two cops, and at the same time saw with amazement that only a few quarters remained. My coins, he realized, are gone. So there is only one door open to me, the mail tube and what it has brought in the last 2 days, whether I like it or not. By what I've done just now, it's been decided. "Why did you give me this coin?" the cop asked. "As a tip," Joe said, and at the same time felt his head burst as the laser beam, on stun, hit him directly between his eyes. At the police station, the swank young police official, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, slim, in his swank-clean uniform, said, "We're not going to book you, Mr. Fernwright, although technically you're guilty of a crime against the people." "The state," Joe said. He sat hunched over, rubbing his forehead, trying to make the pain stop. "Not the people," he managed to say. He shut his eyes, and the pain flooded over him, radiating out from the spot where the beam had touched him. "What you're saying," the young police official said, "constitutes in itself a felony, and we could book you on that, too. We could even turn you over to the Political Control Bureau as an enemy of the working class, engaged in a conspiracy to advocate agitation against the people and the servants of the people, such as ourselves. But your record heretofore—" He studied Joe with professional intensity. "A sane man doesn't start handing out coins to total strangers." The police official examined a document which had come unreeling itself out of a slot of his desk. "Obviously you acted without deliberation." "Yes," Joe said, "without deliberation." He felt nothing in the way of emotions. He experienced only bodily discomfort, acute and still growing. It had preempted any feeling, any mental activity. "However, we're going to impound your remaining coins, for the present at least, and you'll be on probation for a year, during which time you will report here once a week and give us an account, a full account of your activities." "Without a trial?" Joe said. "Do you want to be tried?" The police official eyed him keenly. "No," Joe said. He went on rubbing his head. The QCA material apparently hadn't been fed to their computers yet, he decided. But eventually it'll all be combined. They'll put it all together, my tipping the cop, my finding notes in the water closet of my toilet. "I'm a nut," he said to himself. "I've gone mad from inactivity. The last 7 months have destroyed me. And now, when I made my move, when I took my coins to Mr. Job, I couldn't do it." "Wait a minute," another cop said. "Here's something on him from QCA. It just rolled down the circuit from their computer bank central." Turning, Joe ran toward the door of the police station, toward the mass of people outside, as if to bury himself among them, to cease to be a finite part. 2 cops appeared ahead of him, and they lunged toward him as he ran. They came closer, unnaturally rapidly, as if on videotape speeded up. And then, suddenly, they were under water. They, like slender silver fish, gaped at him and rhythmically maneuvered themselves among, good God, coral and seaweed. And yet he himself felt nothing, no water. But here was a tank of water instead of a police station, all the furniture like sunken wrecks, half buried in sand. And the police twisted and streaked by him, lovely in their glittering, gliding movements. But they could not touch him, because he, although standing in the center, was not in the tank. And he heard no sound. Their mouths moved, but only silence reached him. Bobbing and undulating, a squid swept past him. It was, he thought, like the soul of the sea. The squid all at once ejected clouds of darkness, as if meant to efface everything. He saw no police officers now. The darkness propagated itself until it filled up the panorama, then it became more intense, as if it were not opaque enough before. "But I can breathe," Joe said. "Hey," he said aloud, and heard his own voice. "I'm just not in the water," he realized, "like they are. I can identify myself. I'm split off. a separate entity. But why? What if I try to move? He wondered. He took one step, another, and then clunk. He rebounded off a wall-like surface. Another way, he said. He turned and took a step to his right. Clunk. In panic, he thought, I'm in a box like a coffin. Did they kill me? He asked himself. When I tried to run for the door. He reached his arms out into the darkness, groping, and something was placed in his right hand, small, square, with two disc-like knobs. A transistor radio. He turned it on. "Hi there, folks," a happy, tinny voice sounded in the darkness. "This is cavorting Kerry Carnes here with 6 phones sitting in front of me and 20 switchboard circuits going so that I can hear all of you good people who want to discuss something, anything. The number is 394-950-911111, so call in, folks. About anything at all, whatever's on your mind, good, bad, indifferent, interesting, or dull, just call Cavorting Kerry Carnes at 394-950-911111, and the whole radio audience out there will hear you and what you have to say, your opinion, a fact that you know that you think everyone else should know." From the speaker of the transistor radio came the sound of a phone ringing. "Hello, we've got a caller already," Cavorting Kerry Carnes declared. "Yes, sir, yes, ma'am, I mean." "Mr. Carnes," a shrill female voice said, "there ought to be a stop sign placed at the intersection of Fulton Avenue and Clover, where all the little school children, and I see them every day." Something hard, some dense object, bumped Joe's left hand. He took hold of it. A phone. Sitting down, he placed the phone and the transistor radio in front of him, and then he got out his cigarette lighter and zipped the butane flame on. It illuminated a meager circle, but within the circle he could make out the phone and the transistor radio. A Zenith transistor radio, he noted. Evidently a good one from the size of it. "Okay, folks out there," Cavorting Kerry Carnes merrily prattled. "The number is 394-950-911111. That's where you'll reach me. And through me the whole world of—" Joe dialed. At last he had painstakingly dialed the whole number. He held the receiver to his ear, listened to a busy signal for a moment, and then heard, from both the receiver and the radio, the voice of Cavorting Kerry Carnes. "Yes, sir, or is it ma'am?" Carnes asked. "Where am I?" Joe said into the phone. "Hey there," Carnes said. "We've got somebody out there, some poor soul who's lost. Your name is, sir?" "Joseph Fernwright," Joe said. "Well, Mr. Fernwright, it's a downright pleasure to talk to you. Your question is, where are you? Does anybody know where Mr. Joseph Fernwright of Cleveland— you are in Cleveland, aren't you, Mr. Fernwright? Does anybody out there know where he is at this moment? I think this is a valid question on Mr. Fernwright's part. I'd like to hold the lines open for anyone who can call in and give us some idea, at least a general idea, of the vicinity in which Mr. Fernwright is currently. So you other people who don't know where Mr. Fernwright is, could you not call in until we've located Mr. Fernwright? Mr. Fernwright, it shouldn't be long. We've got a 10 million audience and a 50,000-watt transmitter going. And wait, a call." Tinny sound of a phone ringing. "Yes, sir, or ma'am, sir? Your name, sir?" A male voice from the radio and from Joe's phone said, "My name is Dwight L. Glimang of 301 Pleasant Hill Road, and I know where Mr. Fernwright is. He's in my basement, slightly to the right and a little behind my furnace. He's in a wooden packing crate that came with an air-conditioning unit that I ordered from People's Sears last year." "You hear that, Mr. Fernwright?" Cavorting Kerry Carnes whooped. "You're in a packing crate, and Dwight L— what was the rest of your name, sir?" "Glimang." "Mr. Dwight L. Glimang's basement of 301 Pleasant Hill Road. So all your troubles are over, Mr. Fernwright. Simply get out of the packing crate, and you'll be just fine." "I don't want him to bust the crate, though," Dwight L. Glimang said. "Maybe I better go down there into that basement and pry a few boards loose and let him out." "Mr. Fernwright," Carnes said, "just for the edification of our radio audience, how did you happen to get into an empty packing crate in the basement of Mr. Dwight L. Glimang of 301 Pleasant Hill Road? I'm sure our audience would like to know." "I don't know," Joe said. "Well, perhaps then, Mr. Glimang— Mr. Glimang? He seems to have rung off. Evidently he's on his way down into the basement to let you out, Mr. Fernwright. What a lucky thing for you it was, sir, that Mr. Glimang happened to be listening to this show. Otherwise you probably would be in that crate until doomsday. And now let's turn to another listener. Hello? The phone clicked in Joe's ear. The circuit had been broken. Sounds from around him. A creaking noise and something wide bent back. Light flooded into the box wherein Joe Fernwright sat with his cigarette lighter, his phone, and his transistor radio. "I got you out of the police barracks the best way I could," a male voice, the same that Joe had heard on the radio, said. "A strange way," Joe said. "To you strange. Strange to me have been a number of things you've done since the time I first became aware of you." Joe said, "Like giving away my coins." "No, I understood that. What strikes me as odd is your having sat for all those months in your work cubicle, waiting." A second slat slid away. More light flooded in at Joe, and he blinked. He tried to see Glimang, but he still could not. "Why didn't you go to a nearby museum and break a number of their pots anonymously, and you would have got their business, and the pots would have been healed as new, nothing would have been lost, and you would have been active and productive over these days." The last slat fell away, and Joe Fernwright saw, up in the full light, the creature from Sirius 5, the life form which the encyclopedia had described as being senile and penniless. He saw a great hoop of water spinning on a horizontal axis, and within it, on a vertical axis, a transversal hoop of fire. Hanging over and behind the two elemental hoops, a curtain draped and floated, a billowing fabric which he saw, with amazement, was paisley. And one more aspect, an image embedded at the nucleus of the revolving hoops of fire and water. The pleasant, pretty face of a brown-haired teenaged girl. It hung suspended, and it smiled at him, an ordinary face, easily forgotten, but always encountered. It was, he thought, a composite mask, as if drawn on a blank sidewalk with colored chalk. A temporary and not very impressive visage, through which Glimang apparently meant to encounter him. But the hoop of water, he thought, the basis of the universe, as was the hoop of fire, and they revolved on and on at a perfectly regulated speed. A superb and eternal self-perpetuating mechanism, he thought, except for the flimsy paisley shawl and the immature female face. He felt bewildered. Did what he see add up to strength? Certainly it gave no aura of senility, and yet he had the impression that despite the jejune face, it was very old. As to its financial status, he could make no estimate at this time. That would have to come later, if at all. "I bought this house 7 years ago," Glimang, or at least a voice, said, "when there was a buyer's market." Joe, looking for the source of the voice, distinguished an oddity which twitched his blood and made him cold, as if ice and fire had mixed together in him, a pale analogue of Glimang. The voice. It came from an ancient wind-up Victrola, on which a record played at a peculiar high speed. Glimang's voice was on the record. "Yeah, I guess you're right," Joe said. 7 years ago was a good time to buy. You do your recruiting from here?" "I work here," Glimang's voice, from the ancient wind-up Victrola, answered. "I work many other places as well, in many star systems. Now, let me tell you where you stand, Joe Fernwright. To the police, you simply turned and walked out of the building, and for some reason they seemed unable at the time to stop you. But an APB has been sent out regarding you, so you can't go back to your rooming house or your work cubicle." "Without being caught by the police," Joe said. "Do you want that?" "Maybe it has to be," Joe said stoically. "Nonsense. Your police are feral and malicious. I want you to see Held Sakala, as it was before it sank. And the phonograph ran down. Joe, via the hand crank, wound it up again, feeling a mixture of feelings, each of which he would probably, if asked, be unable to describe. "You will find a viewing instrument on the table to your right," Glimang said, the record now playing at its proper speed. "A depth perception mechanism originating here on your own planet." Joe searched and found an antique stereoscope viewer, circa 1900, with a set of black and white cards to be put into it. "Couldn't you do better than this?" he demanded. "A film sequence or stereo videotape? Why, this thing was invented before the automobile." It came to him then. "You are broke," he said. "Smith was right." "That's a calumny," Glimang said. I am merely parsimonious. It is an inherited characteristic of my order. As a product of your socialistic society, you are used to great waste. I, however, am still on the free enterprise plan. A penny saved? Oh, Christ, Joe groaned. If you want me to quit, Glimang said, merely lift the microdisc playback head and needle assembly from the record. What happens when the record comes to an end? Joe said. It will never do so. Then it's not a real record. It's a real record. The grooves form a loop. What do you really look like? Joe said. Glimang said, What do you really look like? Nettled, Joe said, gesticulating, It depends on whether you accept Kant's division of phenomena from the Ding an sich, the thing itself, which, like Leibniz's windowless monad... He halted, because the phonograph had run down again. The record had ceased to turn. As he rewound it, Joe thought he probably didn't hear anything I said, and probably on purpose. I missed your philosophical discourse, the phonograph declared, when he had finished rewinding it. What I'm saying, Joe said, is that a phenomenon perceived is done so in the structural percept system of the perceiver. Much of what you see in perceiving me, he pointed to himself for emphasis, is a projection from your own mind. To another percept system I would appear quite different. To the police, for instance, there are as many world views as there are sentient creatures. Glimang said. You understand the distinction I'm making, Joe said. Mr. Fernwright, what do you really want? The time has come for you to choose, to act, to participate, or not participate, in a great historical moment. At this moment, Mr. Fernwright, I am in 1,000 places, committing or helping to commit an enormous variety of engineers and artisans. You are one craftsman out of many. I can't wait for you any longer. Am I vital to the project? Joe asked. A pot-healer is vital, yes. You or someone else. Joe said, When do I get my 35,000 crumbles? In advance? You will get them way... Glimang began to say, but again the old Victrola became unwound. The record slowed to a halt. Cagey bastard, Joe said to himself grimly as he rewound the phonograph. When? The Glimang said. And if, only if, the cathedral is raised once more as it was centuries ago. That's what I thought, Joe thought. Will you go to Plowman's Planet? Glimang asked. For a time, Joe considered. In his mind, he considered his room, the cubicle in which he worked, the loss of his coins, the police. He thought about it all and tried to make it add up. What ties me here? He asked himself. The known, he decided. The fact that I'm used to it. You can get used to anything, and even learn to like it. Pavlov's theory of learned reflex is correct. I'm held by habit. And nothing more. Could I have just a few crumbles in advance? He asked Glimang. I want to buy a cashmere sports jacket and a new pair of wash-and-wear shoes. The phonograph split apart. Pieces of it rained everywhere, lancing Joe's arms and face. And in the center of the hoops of water and of fire, a huge, contorted, furious face manifested itself. The feeble female countenance disappeared, and what glared at Joe now glared with the force of a sun. The face cursed at him, cursed in a language he did not know. He shrank back, appalled by the anger of Glimang. The ordinary objects through which Glimang had up to now manifested himself disintegrated into bits, the paisley shawl, even the 2 elemental hoops. The basement itself began to crack apart like a declining ruin. Pieces of cement fell to the floor, and then the floor itself broke like dried clay. Jesus, Joe thought, and Smith said it was senile. Now huge chunks of the house were dropping around him. A section of pipe banged him on the head, and he heard 1,000 voices singing 1,000 songs of fear. I'll go, he said aloud, his eyes shut, hands enwrapping his head. You're right, it's not a joke, I'm sorry. I know this has great importance to you. The fist of Glimang clutched him around the waist. It lifted him up as it squeezed him like a roll of newspaper. He saw for an instant the raging, melting, burning eye, a single eye, and then the firestorm ebbed. The pressure around his waist relaxed, just a trifle, but enough. He thought, I probably won't get any ribs cracked. I better get a medical examination before I leave Earth, though, just to be sure. I will set you down in the main lounge of the Cleveland spaceport, Glimang said. You will find that you have enough money for a ticket to Plowman's Planet. Take the next flight. Do not go back to your room for your things. The police are waiting for you there. Take this." Glimang thrust something into his hand. In the light it reflected many colors. The colors blended into one shape and then trickled out in thread-like streams to reform in another pattern. And then another, which leaped up at him wildly. "A potsherd," Glimang said. "This is a piece of a broken vase of the cathedral?" Joe said. "Why didn't you show it to me right away?" I would have gone, he thought, if I'd seen this, if I'd had any idea. "Now you know," Glimang said, "what you will be healing with your talent." Chapter 5. A man is an angel that has become deranged, Joe Fernwright thought. Once they, all of them, had been genuine angels, and at that time they had had a choice between good and evil, so it was easy being an angel. And then something happened. Something went wrong, or broke down, or failed, and they had become faced with the necessity of choosing not good or evil, but the lesser of two evils, and so that had unhinged them, and now each was a man. Seated on the plush plastic bench at the Cleveland spaceport, waiting for his flight, Joe felt weak and unsure of himself, and ahead of him lay a terrible job. Terrible in the sense that it would put inordinate demands on his waning strength. "I am like a gray thing," he thought, bustling along with the currents of air that tumble me, that roll me, like a gray puffball, on and on. Strength. The strength of being, he thought, and opposite to that the peace of non-being. Which was better? Strength wore out in the end every time. So perhaps that was the answer, and no more was needed. Strength, being, was temporary, and peace, non-being, was eternal. It had existed prior to his birth and would resume for him after his death. The period of strength in between was merely an episode, a short flexing of borrowed muscles, a body which would have to be returned to the real owner. Had he not met Glimang, he would never have thought this, realized it. But in Glimang he witnessed eternal, self-renewing strength. Glimang, like a star, fed on himself and was never consumed. And like a star, he was beautiful. He was a fountain, a meadow, an empty twilight street over which dwelt a fading sky. The sky would fade, the twilight would become darkness, but Glimang would blaze on, as if burning out the impurities of everyone and everything around him. He was the light who exposed the soul and all its decayed parts. And with that light he scorched out of existence those decayed portions here and there, mementos of a life not asked for. Seated there in the waiting room of the spaceport, seated upon the unpleasant plastic chair, Joe heard rocket motors winding up. He turned his head, saw through the great window an LB-4 rise upward, shaking the building and everything in it. And then, in a matter of seconds, it had gone. Nothing remained. I gaze across the silence of the marshes, he thought, and out of them, mysterious and wild, pops the sound of giant vehicles. Getting to his feet, he crossed the waiting room to the pottery booth. Seated inside, he put a dime into the slot and dialed at random. The marker came to rest at Zen. "Tell me your torments," the padre said in an elderly voice marked with compassion. And slowly, it spoke as if there were no rush, no pressure. All was timeless. Joe said, "I haven't worked for 7 months, and now I've got a job that takes me out of the Sol system entirely, and I'm afraid. What if I can't do it? What if, after so long, I've lost my skill?" The padre's weightless voice floated reassuringly back to him. "You have worked and not worked. Not working is the hardest work of all." "That's what I get for dialing Zen," Joe said to himself. Before the padre could intone further, he switched to Puritan ethic. "Without work," the padre said in a somewhat more forceful voice, "a man is nothing. He ceases to exist." Rapidly, Joe dialed Roman Catholic. "God and God's love will accept you," the padre said in a faraway, gentle voice. "You are safe in his arms. He will never—" Joe dialed Allah. "Kill your foe," the padre said. "I have no foe," Joe said, "except for my own weariness and fear of failure." "Those are enemies," the padre said, "which you must overcome in a jihad. You must show yourself to be a man, and a true man, is a fighter who fights back. The padre's voice was stern. Joe dialed Judaism. "A bowl of Martian fatworm soup," the padre began soothingly, but then Joe's money wore out. The padre closed down, inert and dead, or anyhow dormant. Fatworm soup, Joe reflected, the most nourishing food known. Maybe that's the best advice of all, he thought. I'll head for the spaceport's restaurant. There, on a stool, he seated himself and picked up the menu. "Care for a tobacco cigarette?" the man next to him said. Horrified, Joe stared at him and said, "My God, you can't smoke a cigarette out in the open, especially here." He turned toward the man in agitation. He started to speak on, and then he realized whom he was speaking to. In human form, Glimang sat beside him. "I never intended," Glimang said, "for you to be so troubled. Your work is good. I've told you that. I picked you because I consider you the finest pot-healer on Earth. I've told you that, too. The padre was right. You need something to eat and a chance to calm down. I'll order for you." Glimang nodded to the robot mechanism from which the food came, nodded as he openly smoked his tobacco cigarette. "Can't they see the cigarette?" Joe asked. "No," Glimang said, "and evidently the food-dispensing mechanism can't see me either." Turning toward Joe, he said, "You order." After he had eaten his bowl of fatworm soup and had drunk his caffeine-free, it had to be so by law, coffee, Joe said, "I don't think you understand. To someone like you—" "What am I like?" Glimang said. "Don't you know?" Joe said. "No creature knows itself," Glimang said. "You don't know yourself. You don't have any knowledge, none at all, of your most basic potentials. Do you understand what the raising will mean for you? Everything that has been latent has been potential in you. All of it will become actualized. Everyone who conspires in the raising, everyone involved, from 100 planets tossed here and there in the galaxy, everyone will be. You have never been, Joe Fernwright. You merely exist. To be is to do, and we will do a great thing, Joe Fernwright." Glimang's voice rang like steel. "Did you come here to talk me out of my doubts?" Joe asked. "Is that why you're at the spaceport? To make sure I don't change my mind and drop out at the last moment?" It couldn't be that. He was not that important. Glimang, stretched between 15 worlds, would not be lowering himself to this, to an attempt to restore the confidence of one meager pot-healer from Cleveland. Glimang had too much to do. There were larger matters. Glimang said, "This is a larger matter."